Hi everyone, it's Ardith for ellenhudson.com. Today I'm excited to be sharing 4 cards I made with a fun technique that uses a stencil and blending solution to lift off a pattern from an alcohol ink background. I've seen a number of people using this method in various videos, and it really results in some fun and always unique looking cards. I even used acetate for one of them, and it worked really well. Let's get started. For my first example, I used Copic ink refills. I have way more refills than I have alcohol inks, so when I want to use specific colors, I can usually find them in my collection. I've got a 5x7 piece of Yupo paper here. I like that it's bigger than a card base because it gives me some choice in which area of the panel I like best to use on my card. I chose a selection of re-inkers in blues, blue-greens, and greens for this card. I used a felt applicator and squeezed a line of each ink onto it. Then I added some Copic blending solution to the felt applicator and pounced it all over my Yupo paper until it was covered. Once it was dry, I chose the area I liked best for my card front, where the colors were more blended and there were fewer hard edges. I chose to use the new Concord & 9th Mod Petals Turnabout stencil. This meant I needed to use the grid markings on my work surface so that the stencil would be in the same place each time I turned it. Once it was lined up, I grabbed a foam ink blender. This is different from the felt applicator I used to put the ink down on the paper. I put a small amount of blending solution onto the blender. You really don't need a lot or it won't be crisp. Then I started gently wiping through the stencil and removing the ink. When I finished the first turn, I lifted the stencil, turned it 90 degrees, lined it up, and repeated the process. I did this 4 times in total to complete the pattern. To finish this card, I cut the Celebrate from the zipper panel die set 3 times and I stacked them up using liquid glue. I added some stars from the Yay die set and a thin black mat on a white card base. For my second card, I started again with a piece of Yupo paper. This time I used alcohol inks in 3 colors and I dropped them right onto the paper, trying to ensure even amounts of the color over the panel. I waited a second to see how far it would move on its own, and then I used a felt blender with blending solution to help spread it. I started by blending the pink and the yellow areas, and then I went back over the blue. I was trying to avoid getting any muddy areas where the 3 colors might mix together, and once it dried, it was really quite pretty. I chose a pretty stencil to use for this one, the mandala from Alexandra Ranke. Again, I used a foam blender to use the ink, but this time rather than wiping, I pounced it because the areas on this stencil are quite small and detailed, and some of the pieces might have bent back if I had been wiping it. I did try another panel with this stencil earlier with a felt applicator rather than the foam blender, and it turned out pretty, but quite a bit less crisp. It really just depends on the look you want. With either applicator, you really don't want too much blending solution, or it may get under the stencil and reactivate the dried alcohol ink. To finish this card, I inlaid the hello from block words 3 times with gold mirror cardstock. I added some gold confetti sequins from Pretty Pink Posh for an elegant look. My third example also uses Yupo paper and alcohol inks applied directly to it. I used a binder underneath my craft mat to create a bit of a tilt because I wanted the rainbow of inks to run across the panel and blend. I added some blending solution to the top to get the colors moving, and I used a paper towel at the bottom to sop up the excess that was becoming a big muddy mess. This time I chose a Catherine Pooler stencil, the Twisted Sunburst. Here, I made a little mistake, and you can learn from it. I should have started wiping the blending solution on the lighter shades first, because my blending foam got a little muddy. I ended up replacing the stencil and going over it again with a clean blender, and I was much happier with my results. To finish this card, I simply cut and inlaid the big Yay die and put the panel onto a black card base. I think the bright colors and radiating sun rays make this card feel very happy and celebratory. For my final example, I decided to try something new, and I used acetate rather than Yupo paper. I used 3 shades of alcohol ink and followed the same process as one of the previous cards. I dropped the ink directly on the acetate and then blended with a felt applicator that had some blending solution on it. I chose one of the newest Altenew stencils for this one. I wasn't sure how the lifting would work with acetate, but it was great. As I wiped the ink off, I pounced the blender onto my work surface to clean off the foam blender a bit before lifting more from the acetate. You need even less blending solution on this because the acetate is so slick that the ink reactivates and moves very easily. To finish this card, I basically built a shaker without any shaker sequins. I wanted there to be space between the acetate panel and the card base, but I didn't think the sequins would be very visible. I created my window with the strands die, adhering the acetate to the back, and then I built up the sides with foam tape. I added a die-cut happy in silver glitter paper and stamped the birthday, which is from Totally Random Sayings Volume 2. And here's my cards. Each one of them is completely unique and different from the others. With backgrounds this pretty, I decided to let them be the star of my cards, and I simply added die-cut and stamped sentiments. I hope you'll give this technique a try. It's really a lot of fun, and you end up with beautiful cards. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up below, and subscribe to this channel for even more inspiration. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.